I think there's nice news when it comes to Algorand. And what is that? Not too long ago, the Algorand Foundation posted on X and it said that Zebec is integrating ALGO, which is Algorand's native token, into its card and payroll products. Now, some people may be wondering, okay, why is this even interesting? Now, I think it's really going to depend on how people view Zebec. So then, again, in case anyone who may not know what Zebec is, let me explain it real quick. Zebec, the way I take a look at it is that it's kind of like a miniature version of Ripple and Stellar, but then it has, these close ties to Solana. Let me explain why. Because ZBCN, which is, the Zebec network's native token, that not too long ago was top 10 in terms of utility when it comes to Solana. Not to mention, Solana Ventures is one of the backers when it comes to Zebec, and also Circle, which is creator of the USDC stablecoin, that allegedly is one of the early backers when it comes to Zebec, and they allegedly also hold a significant amount of ZBCN. So I find that very interesting. Zebec, it's focused on cards, right, which is kind of what this news is talking about. Also, it's focused on payrolls, which I'm going to get into later. But again, there's also an aspect of this in this post that they talk about. However, Zebec is also focused on AI-based PayFi, which is AI-based payment finance. It's focused on RWAs, which are real-world assets. Like for instance, RWA tokens, they are digital representations of physical assets on the blockchain, and they could be used for market sectors ranging for such as, but not limited to, real estate, stocks. We take a look at art. There's a lot of possibilities, but then I'm just saying those are just to name a few. Not to mention, Zebec, it's focused on, the payments market, the global trade and finance market, which is kind of similar to Ripple and Stellar, which is why I think it's like basically somewhat a miniature version of that, but with an aspect of Solana. But even besides all that, now that I got that out of the way, I think this news right here may sound a little bit more kind of exciting than before, right? Because if someone probably didn't know what Zebec was, they would have probably thought, okay, how does this even matter? And I'll agree that in the grand scheme of things, a lot of my friends out there that do hold Algorand, they probably don't really care about this that much because some of them don't really care about Zebec, but I think it's very interesting nonetheless. And arguably, I think something like this would actually benefit Zebec more than Algorand because Algorand's just a way bigger project as of right now. But then again, I still think it's pretty nice nonetheless. And I find it very exciting because keep in mind, Algorand doesn't need this, right? Like, even before there's any of this type of stuff, I'm already bullish on Algorand anyways. But then the thing is, this kind of showcases that they take the project seriously. Some other projects out there, they don't really treat it seriously, I think, in my opinion. They maybe treat it sometimes like a part-time thing, and maybe it is. In some cases, I have no idea because I'm not a part of their team or whatever. But then I'm just saying, when it comes to Algorand, it just gives me the vibe that it's at least being taken seriously. And the fact that they're doing stuff like this, I think showcases that they're constantly trying to improve, right? Other projects out there in Algorand's position, they may not even bother with this, but I do find it very fascinating. I mean, especially when I consider the kind of achievements that Algorand has been able to have, right? Like, for instance, it's the technology of choice allegedly for over 2,000 global organizations. Algorand, I think, I would say it's one of the projects out there when it comes to layer 1 blockchains that I'm a fan of because of its fundamentals. I like its scalability. I like its low gas fees. I like how it's fast. And also, not to mention, it's allegedly carbon neutral. So I think Algorand overall is very unique, very interesting. Not to mention, Algorand has an aspect of ISO 20022. Keep in mind, Ripple and Stellar, they have an aspect of that as well. And, when it comes to ISO 20022, that is currently being used by many financial institutions from all around the world for something called inter-organizational data exchange. So I think stuff like that really does, kind of make Algorand in this regard where I think it is arguably pretty special to me, even though I cannot speak on anyone's behalf. And again, right, I'm going to read this post, yet again, because it said that Zebec is integrating ALGO, again, Algorand's native token, into its card and payroll products. Now, more specifically, when it comes to, its cards, Zebec, it's really nothing special because a lot of projects out there have cards, but it is allegedly powered by MasterCard, right? It supports multiple blockchains, like for instance, the base network, which is Coinbase's layer 2. We take a look at Solana, we take a look at something like Ethereum. Of course, there's others, but I'm just saying, that's pretty cool, even though it's nothing revolutionary. But I think something that is kind of revolutionary when it comes to Zebec is its aspect on payrolls. More specifically, it's kind of focused on instant payrolls. Now, let me explain kind of what I mean by that because, for instance, when I was back in college, I was working a part-time job, but then I had to wait 2 weeks to get paid, right? So it was quite a while. But through instant payrolls, I might not have to wait 2 weeks because, again, it's instant. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing having instant payrolls because it gives the option, at least in theory. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the number one choice because payrolls in general have been already working pretty well, in my opinion. But then at the same time, having that option, I don't think is that bad. So when I take a look at something like Algorand having this kind of arguable partnership, I would say, I find it pretty interesting. And let's say Algorand's native token called ALGO were to hypothetically go to the price of $5. That's around a 19x from here. I get it. Some people may be thinking, okay, who cares about around a 19x? Well, is Bitcoin going to do that in the next 6 to 10 months? Is Ethereum going to do that? I would not actually believe in that idea because Bitcoin going to 300 grand, slightly less than a 3x from here. Ethereum going to 10 grand, less than a 3x from here as well. So I mean, Algo, Ethereum, or Bitcoin, I cannot make a choice for anyone, by the way. I can only speak on my behalf. But if I only had those three options, I'm going to have to say Algo for me, not for, on anyone's behalf. But then this is just the way you take a look at it. Algo, it's an altcoin, market cap, I get it, isn't the smallest out there, but it's not like some kind of dinosaur where the market cap is just way too massive. But again, it doesn't feel like that type of altcoin where it's like a microcap where I don't really want to get into that either. I think it's a good balance in between. The community has proven good exchange listings. I think the fundamentals when it comes to Algorand as a layer 1 blockchain, I think is, really good in my perspective. Algorand is often compared to something like Avalanche, and I kind of get the comparisons though because, Avalanche, much like Algorand, is kind of like this up-and-coming layer 1 blockchain that's already pretty massive with a good following, but it hasn't, kind of surpassed that mainstream status. It hasn't entered that yet, much like what we see with a BNB chain, with like a Solana, for instance, like an Ethereum, or maybe even to a certain extent something like Sui, which has been gaining a lot of attention as of late. So the way you take a look at it is that Algorand and, Avalanche are kind of in the same position, and I do like that because it does fit the criteria that I'm looking for, a project that's kind of medium. That's the way you take a look at it. Now, at the price of $5, considering current circulating supply, market cap would be around $43.5 billion. Again, we've seen Dogecoin reach over 80 billion back in 2021. We've seen, BNB reach over 100 billion back then that year as well. There's more competitors now, but there's not that many drastically good new competitors in my opinion. So all I can do right now is just stay patient, dollar cost average hold, and just wait in an event where there is a fully fledged type of hypothetical altcoin season, which I do not know the exact time that will happen because it's going to depend, right? Each cycle is going to be different. But whenever that does happen, I want to be prepared by just holding and just waiting. However, I can take a look back in history. Historically speaking, altcoins, they typically peak as a worst case scenario around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event. Based on the last Bitcoin halving event that happened last year in April, 18 months, we add on top of that, that's around October this year. Is it going to happen at that time? Who knows? It may happen later, or, if it ever does. But then, let's say it maybe does, I want to be prepared by just holding and just waiting. And that's pretty much it. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I would greatly appreciate it. It's only the Captain, and I'll catch you all in the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.